So, what do you think about aliens?
I think they exist. I think they're real. I think there are too many unexplained events and occurrences in the world, and I think that there is a lot of physical evidence.
If you ignore all of that, you can call bullshit on the evidence, whatever. You have to take a step back and let's nerd out. You have to look at the numbers. Think about it. Think about all the galaxies there are in the universe. Think about how many galaxies there are that we don't know about. And you know what makes our sun special?
Nothing.
In our little solar system? Yeah, really nothing. It's just kind of an ordinary star. And there are a lot of stars out there with planets revolving around them. And we'll never be able to touch them, at least not in our lifetimes. And I think it's kind of insane to say our planet's it. In the entire universe, the enormous universe, that's insane. You can crunch the numbers. I did once. The odds of our planet being the only planet in the universe with intelligent life, kind of equivalent to winning the lottery, playing the same numbers twice.
Yeah, that is a way to nerd out.
Wouldn't bet on that.
No, not at all.
Give me your money if you will.
But it's not only just about, the statistics behind it. You think about even every bit of the ocean that we're unable to explore, and you can kind of take that, and the universe is how much bigger than the ocean?
Exactly. We haven't got to the deepest depths of the ocean on our own planet.
Right.
We can hardly get to Mars. We barely just got man to the moon. If you consider like the entire course of like human advancement, we just got man to the moon.
I think also we have to take into consideration all of the eyewitness accounts.
Right. Yeah. If we can't go to the aliens,
they're going to come to us. So you can guess that today we're going to bring you scary stories of a different kind of variety. The unknown visitors from space, the extraterrestrial life forms that we share this big universe with. Aliens.
Yeah. Just a few years ago, the Pope acknowledged the possibility of extraterrestrial life. I mean, it's not a wackadoo belief. It's sort of a mainstream popular theory that we're probably not alone.
Right.
So,
and we're probably not.
Right. So the stories we're going to share tonight, they may not sound like anything you would ever believe to be possible, but given all the basis for the facts, you have to wonder if they're actually true.
You have to listen to these stories with an open mind. We will never know the truth. We weren't there. It's such a controversial topic. You have the government providing us with certain details that conflicts with eyewitness accounts that are being publicized in the media and
quote unquote disinformation
or fake news.
Exactly. But people used to think the world was flat, and you were a fool if you thought otherwise.
You were a witch if you thought
everything
otherwise.
Used to revolve around the earth. That was a common belief too.
We've all seen the videos of UFOs flying through the sky, and we've all heard the stories of those who've been abducted in the middle of the night. And today we're going to bring you stories to satisfy all of your interstellar desires.
Yeah, this first story is one of the most well-known and I guess well-documented, well-researched, and well-covered by the media abduction stories that's ever taken place. It took place in the mid-70s down in Arizona. Let's check it out.
There were 7 men up there about 3 days ago. They were all coming back just after dark. They were cutting wood and they were coming in. They saw this bright light, this object that looked to all seven of them, at the time there were seven, like a saucer or some unidentified object.
What you're hearing is an actual call placed to the National UFO Reporting Center, also known as NUFORC, in Seattle, Washington. It took place on November 8th, 1975, a few days after 22-year-old Travis Walton disappeared while deep in the woods with a crew of 6 other men working on a project for the local Forestry Service. The report came from a friend of Travis's brother. He wanted to share the description of events that he was given.
They saw this light about 20 foot hovering from the ground, and before they actually stopped their truck, Travis jumped out of the car and ran up underneath of this thing, if you can imagine. How many yards away, I don't know. But he ran up underneath of it with his hands in the air as a helpless or friendly gesture. At the time he done this, the other 6 men, and these are pretty good local boys. They're not just, they were sober too.
Yes.
And they all witnessed a blue or a bluish light that projected from the bottom of this craft, whatever it was. And at that time it hit him, and of course he crumpled and fell.
The other voice is the founder of NUFORC, Robert Gribble. He received hundreds, if not thousands of calls reporting unidentified aerial phenomenon from all around the country during a period of over 30 years. This case was different. There was the possibility of multiple witnesses and some sort of contact. But the crew Travis was with, right after they saw him collapse from being hit by the intense light beaming down from the sky, they packed into their truck as fast as they could and took off, desperately trying to escape.
They came back a few minutes later, and there was no sign of anything except as they were departing, as they were entering the area where this happened, they did see this thing, this object, moving across the sky. And the man is gone. They've checked it out. There's radiation there in this spot. They don't know. Ralph told me that it buried.
Ralph Anderson, Travis Walton's brother, was amongst the crew that night. The sequence of events he provided are similar to the initial report. Ralph recalled the state of their crew chief. He was visibly traumatized and really having a hard time coping with what had taken place.
He passed out 3 different times. They literally had to pick him up and get him back on his feet again. He just literally passed out.
Is that after he got back?
That's after he got back. Every time he went out, he just literally passed out. And he was shaking, and a kid that just come off his mission, we asked him what he felt about it, and he said, well, he said, I've never seen a UFO. I've heard it talked about, and he said, I was really skeptical about it, which, is part of their teachings, that
Yes.
This is what it is. And he said, but now, he said, I'm a firm believer, and he was badly shaken.
Later that day, Gribble gets a call from someone relaying a conversation they had with local law enforcement. The Taylor, Arizona town marshal.
Anyhow, I'd called the marshal. He said it sounds pretty good so far, and at least what's the direction it's going. 6 of them went out in the woods. 5 of them came back with the story. Now, this guy's still gone. He said there was even out in the woods right at this time at the area checking it out.
Uh-huh.
They found no traces, nothing, any evidence of anything coming down, landing or otherwise.
So there's actually a case of a missing person and several alleged witnesses, but it sounds like little to no physical evidence of anything happening at all. For those with eyewitness testimony, the 6 men present that night, there seems to be a consistent story between them. Ralph defended Travis, vouching for his above-average intelligence and assuring he would never try to pull a prank like this. Those guys all saw something in the sky that evening, and they all saw it cast out a strange ray of blue light that stopped Travis when it hit him, dead in his tracks. After a few days of search parties, people on horseback, and helicopter flyovers, nearly 5 square miles had been combed, looking for any sign of Travis. Then, just as suddenly as he vanished, 5 days after his disappearance,
Walton is back.
Oh, really?
Really. According to him, he was let out last night about midnight, about a mile from where they picked him up.
Jeez.
He says he was in the craft that period of time, but as far as any comment on anything else, we got nothing, except that he did call the sheriff by phone. He called his brother first, and his brother picked him up. And they've got him in a hospital now, giving him a medical exam. And when he clears from that, he has talked to the sheriff on the phone and made an appointment to be interviewed by him. So that's all they have on that so far.
Well, for crying out loud.
The polygraph tests, 5 of them were positive as being the truth. The 6th one was close but inconclusive.
Well, 5 out of 6, that's pretty good odds.
All right, yeah, and he said the 5 were very positive, so.
Oh, wow.
So this guy's going to have a story to tell, evidently, shortly.
During his absence, the 6 witnesses of Travis's alleged abduction agreed to polygraph exams while undergoing questioning about the events that evening. By that time, the story had already spread outside of the state and was on track to becoming a national sensation. It had broken headlines in the papers and was already being featured on the evening news. But now, with Travis back, everyone wanted his recollection of the events. What did he see up there? What was it like inside? What did they do to him? Travis wasn't really allowed to speak to anyone right away. Doctors found him severely dehydrated and ordered him to remain in the hospital. Whether it was suggested by the doctors or the police, he stayed under an assumed name, and only his mother was allowed to visit him, and only for a brief amount of time. It wasn't long before the stars fell out of alignment, and their story started coming apart. Reports were coming out that no lie detector test had actually taken place. Supposedly, book publishers were in contact with the Waltons, trying to secure the rights to their story.
I've been in the best contact I could keep on the information on this results of this thing. It just doesn't look that good anymore.
That's Ralph Anderson's friend again, the man who made the first call into New Fork. He remains anonymous in the recordings, but you can only imagine the stories he has to share. He's been getting first-hand accounts since the very first night Travis went missing, all the way through his return and into now. Some of the things he heard stuck with him.
To start with, when they picked Dwayne up, not Dwayne rather, but Travis, you heard the origin of the story when they picked him out of the phone booth?
Yes.
Now that had a lot of compassion in it, and that's what led me to believe the man was telling the truth. When Travis tried to fight them off the phone booth, crumpled up there in the phone booth, saying, "I need help." And then his brother Dwayne went up with a friend right down the street here, a fellow right down the road here, and picked Grant Neff went with his brother Dwayne. And finally Dwayne grabbed Travis in the phone booth and just picked him up. And Grant was telling that he was holding Travis just like a baby, and Travis was crying in such a way, and Grant made a statement that it was one of the most beautiful, compassionate things he'd ever seen. That he was finally in the hands of help. Well, this thing really sounded overwhelming. Not only, strictly, not only a compassionate thing, but it looked pretty real. But I just wondered what your feelings were on it at the time, because I thought maybe you directly related to it. You might know things that, because all I'm hearing is what we hear from Ralph, and Ralph can't be blamed for this because he's worried sick about this. He's got quite a few children in school, and he knows the harassment that their children and everyone will be subject to if this turns out to be a big phony hoax.
To this day, over 40 years later, many still believe Travis and the rest of the crew experienced something that night in the forest. UFO researchers often point to the case as one of the most well-documented and authentic alien abductions to ever have taken place. Skeptics also have a particular interest in the case. They mostly agree the story just sounds too good to be true. Factor in the lack of any hard physical evidence, and all we're left with is a handful of eyewitnesses. The believers argue all 7 men, including Travis Walton, passed several polygraph examinations, so they must be telling the truth. The skeptics fire back, questioning the reliability and validity of polygraph results in general. They aren't even admissible in court in some states. And if they're so unreliable, would Travis and the rest of the crew failing their polygraphs really be valid evidence that they were lying? The truth is out there, but in this case, possibly within our own atmosphere.
That is crazy. I couldn't imagine being one of the crew members there to witness that if it in fact did happen, or even Travis Walton himself. But
Yeah, I'd be fainting and passing out too.
I just want to throw it out there. What do you think? Do you think this is true?
In my honest opinion, I can't really believe this took place.
Why not?
Just given all the... If you look at the evidence for the abduction against the evidence against it, it sort of outweighs that this is something that actually happened. If you look a lot, I don't know if this is a good barometer for the truthfulness of something like this, but if you go through and online and sort of research this thing, you can see discussions, and the believers, the people that want to believe, they're not trying to defend the credibility of this scenario. They're trying to defend the credibility of a lie detector test. You know, they're not trying to say, you know, this is credible because aliens obviously exist and what he saw is such a typical alien encounter, so it must have been real. It's like, no, they passed lie detector tests and they're valid because of this, and in these states they're admissible in court, and you need to pass these criteria, and all the examiners had great credentials, and yada yada yada.
Ben from the South is out.
See, it's just, yeah, it goes... That's the kind of arguments they have, and it
Right. They're arguing for the wrong reasons.
Exactly.
I would agree. I don't think this really happened. I think Travis Walton and his friends got a sweet deal out of it. Their story was one of the most publicized abduction stories in history.
They got a major Hollywood film out of it.
And book deals.
And books, yeah.
And just appearing on talk shows, game shows.
The guy's still famous, yeah. He still goes around and talks to people about this.
He's a big advocate for abductees.
Yeah, what's the game show he was on? It was Moment of Truth, I think it's called.
Yeah, so it's an old game. It's kind of like if you
I don't know
were
if
playing...
it's still on. It's not still
No, it's
on.
definitely, maybe, I don't know.
Who knows?
So imagine playing Truth or Dare, except there are no dares, and it's all truth, and you're hooked up to a lie detector test.
Allegedly, or the TV producers are just...
being assholes.
Yeah.
But, you know, Travis Walton was asked the $1 million question. Were you really abducted by aliens?
Yeah, pretty much.
And what exactly were the results?
He said of course he was, you know, and he was not truthful, was the conclusion of the quote-unquote lie detector exam.
If you want more information on Travis Walton and his story, it's plastered all over the internet, so Google's your friend. But also check out the movie Fire in the Sky. Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called. I have not seen it.
Me neither. Plug for movie you've never seen.
And I guess the people that made the film had to jazz up his accounts because they just thought they were a little too vanilla alien abduction for a Hollywood film.
Crafted.
Yeah, I guess so. Too ordinary. Now, we've done all this. Yeah. What else you got, Walton?
So, while Travis Walton and his friends seem to be kind of crazy when it comes to these UFO sightings and alien abduction stories, believe it or not, there are, thousands of cases reported each year. It seems that, experiencing a UFO sighting or being abducted by an alien or having some type of contact with extraterrestrial life forms is more common than you think. And funny enough, but Ben and I actually have our own UFO sighting story.
Yeah, it is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's not as sexy as Travis Walton's story, but it is a pretty good one. Hello? My boyfriend's parents called me in the middle of the night to let me know that they were taking him to the emergency room. He was having a hard time breathing, and they wanted to take him in just to be safe. It was roughly midnight, and they wanted to know if I was interested in going along, so they picked me up on their way in. Luckily, all was fine, and we were sent home. After sitting around in the ER until 4 in the morning, we jumped in the truck and hit the road. It was about a 45-minute drive back into town. Ben had fallen asleep in the back seat, head leaning on mine, and I stared out the window, and I tried to get comfortable. When all of a sudden, a streak of light flashed across the sky. A shooting star, the most magical scene in the night sky. Another one, in the exact same spot. I fixated on the spot in hopes to see more, and then one by one, seconds apart, it seemed to be a regularly scheduled meteor shower lighting up one section of the night sky. I watched in awe and I shook Ben to wake him up. As we both shared in the rare experience of watching stars fly across the sky, Ben noticed that the stars were moving in what seemed to be a rhythmic pattern. 3 lights, swirling in a circular motion in just one piece of the sky, and they seemed to be following our car. Are we crazy? We asked Ben's parents if they see the lights too, and they've been watching them for a while now. We decide to turn off the highway, down a dirt road, and we start chasing the glowing orbs in the sky. Slower and slower, the light seemed to move right above our car. We stopped, and they hovered. And when we drove, the circular pattern of light seemed to propel forward. There is no way these are shooting stars. The movement is way too consistent, it's too mechanical. These lights must be coming from a UFO. After following the lights for half an hour, we pulled over to the side of the road and walked into a field, and we waited. We waited to see if the lights would lower to us, to see if they were hovering over our truck or if they would vanish into space. We walked a dozen feet, and the light circled in the same spot. After standing outside in the cold for a good 20 minutes, trying to chase after these lights, this UFO, to elicit some sort of reaction, it was no use. The lights were just moving in a circular pattern in the same spot in the sky, and our hopes for contact with any interstellar being were shot dead. We hopped in the truck and started driving away. I can't think of a single person that wouldn't want their own UFO story. I was so excited to finally have mine, and I wished so hard something crazy would have happened, but it seemed like our impromptu alien hunt was a bust. But then things got weird. As we continued down the dirt road, the lights in the sky began to brighten. They seemed to move closer together, and they started swirling even faster. And we kept driving and we kept watching, and the lights kept getting brighter and brighter until we saw a light beam shooting from one of the lights in the sky down to the earth. Were the aliens abducting someone or something? We were glued to these lights, waiting to see something or someone floating up into the sky. It was at that point the lights started to look familiar. I slowly started to realize that the beam from the lights in the sky became brighter than the lights themselves. Was the beam the source of the light? Where could these lights be coming from? Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. All of my common sense rushed back to my sleepless mind. After spending hours at the emergency room in the middle of the night, our minds were playing tricks on us. This was no UFO sighting, but the spotlights signaling the grand opening of a new hip club just down the road.
So turns out, if you just take the time to critically think about the things you're observing and connect all of the dots, you may learn something. But it is easy to jump to conclusions, especially when you've got an exhausted mind and you're still on the road in your car behind the wheel on your way home.
Right, and oftentimes there are logical explanations for everything, but it's so hard to tell if these stories are true. Like, what if we never found the source of the light? Then in our minds, we're always going to wonder. And unless you can actually, figure out or debunk your theory, that's why these stories are so intriguing, because it's the mystery of it.
Yeah, I came across a really, really great story, very well written. It's another post to some submit your scariest story thread on Reddit, and this user has since deleted their account, so they'll remain anonymous for this one, but we appreciate the story and you taking the time to write it out. So imagine you're driving home one night. Back roads, seems like any other evening. But all of a sudden, you wake up in a field. Only, that's not the strangest part of the night. I was driving home for the weekend from school at Indiana University. It takes me about 2 hours to get home, and I left Bloomington around 10 o'clock at night. At exactly 10:53, I'm on a rural stretch of two-lane highway, and I notice what appeared to be flashing lights behind me. I thought, great, I'm getting pulled over. So I turned onto the next country road about a quarter mile from where I noticed the lights. As the car came to a stop, and I started to open my glove box to get out my registration and proof of insurance, the lights suddenly disappeared, and no car drove past. Now here's where the story takes a turn for the weird, and I'm sure you guys will think I'm just making it up, because it really does seem like something straight out of a typical UFO movie or story. The electronics in my car started to go haywire. The radio was randomly changing stations while the volume kept going up and down. At the same time, the dome light and the headlights started to flicker on and off. This was at 10:56. I started thinking to myself that my battery must be failing, or I must have a short somewhere in the electric system of my car. I leaned down to pop the hood so I can take a look at the battery, and that is the last thing that I remember doing. The next thing I know, I open my eyes and see nothing but the night sky, full of bright stars. It was a cold night, and it seemed like I had never seen stars that bright in my life. I sat up and looked around, and I saw absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. I was in the middle of a field, surrounded by corn stalks left over from the recent harvest. As I started to come to my senses, I started to freak out. Where am I? Why the fuck am I asleep in the middle of the field? Where the fuck is my car? I got up and started walking toward the distant headlights I could see from a road about half a mile away. When I got to the nearest intersection, I looked at the signs. They read 350 north and 50 west. My car was probably half a mile away, just off the main road I was on. I started walking toward the headlights I could see moving up and down on the main road. I can't say how long it took me to walk the half mile, but it couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes. When I arrived at my car, all the lights were out. My battery had died. I couldn't have been gone for that long. I looked at my phone, which was sitting on the passenger seat, and the time was 2:17 a.m. Over 3 hours had passed since I turned off onto the side road for the flashing lights behind me. I remember sitting in my car completely dumbfounded, wondering what the hell had just happened to me. After about half an hour of just sitting there, I remembered my battery was dead. So I got on the phone and called AAA to come out and give me a jump. It took about an hour for them to get out to me, since I was a good distance away from the nearest town. I just sat there and waited in silence, running through the possible scenarios in my head, trying to piece together what had just happened. To this day, I couldn't tell you what really happened to me that night. I can't think of any plausible explanation as to why I woke up over half a mile away from my car in the middle of a cornfield, more than 3 hours after I stopped. I've only shared this story with one other person, my uncle. I'm sure people would either look at me like I'm crazy, or they would all call bullshit on the whole thing. I can't blame them. If somebody came to me with a story like that so closely mirrors the stereotypical encounter story, I probably wouldn't believe them either.
Can you imagine what the first thought going through your mind would be is if you woke up somewhere that you don't remember going to, you lost a couple hours of your time, and you just didn't have any of your personal belongings on you? Like, what would you think happened?
That'd be a blackout. That's
Yeah.
a blackout.
So what if you blacked out, like I don't know, maybe this kid blacked out and he sleptwalked, or I'm assuming it's they sleptwalked to this spot and laid down and took a little cat nap and kind of woke up, snapped out of it. But is that likely if you've never done something like that before?
Right, I don't know. If you black out and you're by yourself, like, you don't know. Nobody knows.
It's that whole if a tree falls in the woods and if nobody hears it, did it make a noise?
Right, exactly.
So, real or not, this story is kind of scary on a couple of different levels. You know, you have somebody's, manipulating your memory, or you experience some physical ailment that
And
caused you to...
It seems so random, too. Just driving down the road late at night.
And the fact that you see the lights behind you and you think it's a police officer pulling you over, that's an external factor that you have to think about with this story. So do you think the story's true? Or do you think they made it up just for entertainment purposes?
I don't have a reason not to believe them, but I guess it's fairly easy to go on Reddit and just make up a story and put it on there. It's not so crazy detailed where I'm like, man, it had to have happened. Maybe that's why they deleted their account.
Somebody debunked them.
Maybe they were, trolling. So I'm not sure that I do believe it.
Regardless, pretty good story.
Not bad. Creative, sir.
And we love creative stories. So if you have a creative story that you want to share with us and help share with all of our At the Fire listeners, go to our website, atthefire.com, and submit your story.
Even if you just blacked out and it's an interesting story, share it with us. Maybe you did get abducted and you don't even know it.
We've had a lot of fun tonight with everybody sharing some of our favorite UFO and alien stories. Thanks for joining us. As always, this is Jill.
And my name is Ben.
And we hope to have you back with us next episode.
Good night. Nanu nanu.
Sultan.